I actually think Star Rail is a pretty damn good turn-based game, especially during the premise of 1.0 through 2.0. But saying that Star Rail is an insult to turn-based games is pretty harsh. I'm actually curious to hear what this guy has to say.
One cleared, when in reality, your Sunday and Robin or RMC dragged his lifeless corpse to the finish line. But can we stop being allergic to having a better game? When people critique Elden Ring, people might disagree, but they're always open to the idea of improving the game, even though it literally won Game of the Year and is considered one of the greatest games of all time. I play 5 gacha games right now, and I play them all free to play. I do not own any monthly passes or battle passes. Some might say I should be the only motherfucker getting praised.
Oh, this is gonna be a great video. This is made by Shuzukita, only 10% dislike ratio. A channel with 500 subs got 67,000 views. So I want to hear out everything that this new, fresh perspective has to say.
I recently got into a heated disagreement with a good friend of mine over comparing Star Rail to Fate Grand Order. We're still friends because any adult with brain cells knows you can disagree with someone and still get along as good friends up
Imagine that.
Until this year, I thought that was common knowledge, but I'm digressing. That conversation inspired me to write a video about how Star Rail seems to have convinced people that they're good at a strategy game, when in fact, they're good at spinning the wheel. So keeping with the theme of my last video, let's talk about what turn-based games are actually like.
Sure.
Now,
they're like Pokemon. Pokemon, the turn-based game I play. I like that.
As with my last video, my goal isn't to attack people for enjoying Star Rail. I also play.
I always love for any Genshin video or any Hoyoverse related video, they have to say, by the way, this constructive video is not an attack on who you are. It's so embarrassing.
The game daily, which I have my reasons for, despite the first 2 videos talking about it fairly negatively. Also keeping in line with my first video, my intention is to discuss something that I see as an issue and use examples to back up why I think the way I do.
I think that's great. Showing proof of your claims is always great. That's something that I really wish this community would get more involved in.
Last time I was speaking very broadly about the Big Four, I couldn't logically tackle systems unique to the genre of open world or turn-based.
I do want to make it very clear, I'm not watching this video because I dislike Honkai Star Rail right now. I am obviously disappointed with the trajectory of where it's going, but I'm watching this because I do wonder, is there a way to fix or improve this game in a way that I haven't thought of prior?
This video will serve as a more specific look at the ladder. In this video, we will go over 3 turn-based systems that when done correctly produce amazing turn-based games, from gachas like Girls Frontline 2, Fate Grand Order, and Limbus Company, to non-gachas such as XCOM 2, Slay the Spire, and the Persona games, and how Star Rail has managed to miss the mark and butcher these systems in the name of money, RNG, and just poor design choices. We'll be using examples from both inside and outside the gacha genre, since being a gacha game does not make it exempt from turn-based critique, especially when Hoyoverse is a multi-billion-dollar company, yet some of these turn-based games are made by small teams, if not just a single developer. At the end, I'll try to address some counter-arguments and clarify my points, but of course, if you disagree—
I would say, I think Limbus Company's combat system is more complex and fun for me than Honkai Star Rail. However, I wouldn't outright say that Limbus Company has better combat, because I think there are going to be people who enjoy either side. I also think Honkai Star Rail's combat system is simplistic by design. That's the thing, is that I don't think making it more complex would make it better. So I'm wondering where he goes, because a lot of people get their opinion misconstrued with what makes something better. I like it more, which makes it better. Well, that's not true. The important thing to target is, what is their audience, how to appeal and please that audience more.
Agree, let me know in a constructive way so that people can discuss these topics rather than fighting about them.
A good example is giving Genshin Impact Dark Souls combat wouldn't make it better, it would kill the game. Because the audience wants Mickey Mouse retard combat. It doesn't want complex, like you actually have to think and be good in the game. They don't want that.
The reception to my last video was incredibly positive, so hopefully this video will be even better. With all that said, let's talk about why I consider Star Rail an insult to turn-based games.
Because the other thing is that like these pretend good player content creators like Zajeff, if the game were to actually become hard, they wouldn't be able to have a job anymore. So it is good for the community and the content creators alike to be able to pretend that they're good at this baby Mickey Mouse game. Super important.
First, let's go over some of the systems that Star Rail has and my issues with them. I'm going to assume that you're familiar with the general combat of Star Rail, so I won't dive too deep into explaining its systems. That way I can talk more about the issues with those systems. Let's start by talking about type weaknesses. To be clear, I'm talking about when an enemy has elements above their toughness bar, indicating which elements reduce their toughness and cause them to become broken. So what is the point of type weakness? Generally speaking, weaknesses are a way to make fights more engaging, as it makes the player think more about how to approach each fight. Oftentimes, the player also comes with weaknesses, meaning the fight isn't just about what you're fighting, but also whether the enemy can exploit any potential gaps in your lineup. A great example of type weaknesses in games is Pokemon. Now, I know this isn't a gacha game, but hear me out for just a second. As most people know, all Pokemon moves have an element, and Pokemon have elemental weaknesses. Let's take a look at this dynamic by taking a look at 2 of the Elite Four in Pokemon Emerald.
You know what would make Pokemon a way worse game? Yeah, well, we added in this new Pokemon that's just super effective against everything. Oh man, isn't that great? Dude, doesn't that sound fun? With this Pokemon, you just win all the time. And then this Pokemon makes all of your Pokemon and your whole team super effective against everything. Man. Yep, and this Pokemon says, as long as you captured this Pokemon and it's in your PC, all your Pokemon's get a free revive. Oh, and there's this other Pokemon that if you catch it, it makes all of your Pokemon faster, even when not using it. And here's the other thing. If you get 3 copies of this Pokemon by going to the in-game store for $900, your Pokemon's going to do 15% more damage and get special animation whenever it attacks. Oh my God, comparing it to Pokemon makes me want to blow my brains out. Holy fuck, Honkai Star Rail. Oh my God. Dude, just bringing this name up made me think about it for 5 seconds. If they were to take what Honkai Star Rail's doing and do it to a normal turn-based RPG, Jesus Christ.
The second fight is against Phoebe and her lineup of ghost Pokemon. Now, since we want to be prepared, we need to bring something that can deal with ghost types. Looking at ghost matchups, we can see that our best options are to use ghost moves or dark moves. We now need to consider that if we bring a ghost type ourselves, we will also take double damage, since we also have weaknesses. This means that we would prefer to find a non-ghost type who knows a ghost move which comes with its own problems, or bring a dark type, though we may need a better strategy to deal with Sableye. Since we need the same team for the whole Elite Four, we can't just bring 6 Dark or Ghost Pokemon. Up next is Glacier, with her lineup of Water and Ice Pokemon. This presents a slightly different problem, where all of her Pokemon are Ice, but since 3 come with Water as well, Fire Pokemon are not able to have a lot of presence against her. Considering our previous fight, we could choose to bring someone like Banette or Dusclops, who are Ghost Pokemon that can also learn Will-O-Wisp, a Fire move. This means they can help in the fight against Phoebe, while also providing some Fire coverage against Glacier, without carrying the weakness against water moves. Or instead, we could look into its other weaknesses, being fighting, rock, and steel. As you can hopefully see, fights aren't just about bringing the biggest, strongest thing. It's about checking what the Elite Four has and how you can best prepare to fight against them.
Now, that being said, you want to know how I played Pokemon when I was a little kid? I'm going to capture a Dragonite, and then I'm going to get him to level 100 by doing the Missingno glitch and get infinite rare candies, and then I'm just gonna kill everything in one hit, right? I Honkai Star Railified my Pokemon when I was in 3rd grade, and that's why it's good to have that in Honkai Star Rail, because, well, the game's made for a younger audience for sure. Whereas we all know, Pokemon is either made for 5-year-olds or 40-year-olds, and that's the damn truth.
This risk-reward gameplay that encourages you to come prepared, and you are rewarded for doing so. It's not a recommendation, it's a core principle that makes the player feel accomplished when they're able to overcome the opposition, not through gambling and spending money, but through skill expression and preparation. And for anyone saying, nah, just use Master Ball on Rayquaza, let's just remember the Elite Four is level 46 to 58. If we were 12 levels above the enemies in MOC 12, since you catch Rayquaza at level 70, it would also be a joke, and vice versa. If the Elite Four was level 70, Rayquaza wouldn't just be sweeping every time. Speaking of Memory of Chaos, we can pretend that the enemies have weaknesses, but in reality, these no longer matter. You just bring Firefly, Rapper, Acheron, Boothill, and others to just implant or straight out ignore weaknesses. That level of engagement and prep needed for a boss just isn't there anymore. Adding on to that, the fact we as the player have no weaknesses, there really isn't a reason to not bring these units. And knowing Star Rail, the issue will only get worse. As a side note, a game I mentioned last week, Heaven Burns Red, also does not have weaknesses on the player's side. However, resistances are vital, since if you use a unit that deals slash damage against an enemy with slash resistance, not only do you
I think the premise of having units that are always good forever is really bad. And then I think it's even worse when you say it. This unit is really good forever until we decide that it's not. And then we want to put out a new character that's the new good till for forever character. I think that's a really bad principle to have in a game.
deal significantly less damage, but you are physically unable to fill up your OD gauge. You may be wondering, what is the OD gauge and why is that important? Well, to talk about that, we need to address another problem with Star Rail, and that is the speed mechanic. I feel like people don't talk about the issues with speed enough. Now,
guys, I think we're going to do a Metaphor ReFantazio playthrough just to see what a real turn-based RPG is functioning as in 2025. I think we're going to do that in the future for sure. And I think we're just going to beat the whole thing. Straight up. I just want to play more games.
most turn-based games follow a simple formula of you attack, opponent attacks, and this back and forth continues until the end of battle. This is the case for many of the original Final Fantasy games, Persona games, and we even see it in gacha games like Fate Grand Order, SDSGC, and Reverse 1999. Admittedly, that can be somewhat boring, although it's worth noting these games will aim to make up for that through various other combat features and design choices. Speed is not inherently bad as a stat, and the previously mentioned Pokemon also does have speed as a stat. So why is it a problem in Star Rail? Well, it comes in two forms: the acquisition of speed and the modification of speed. So what does that even mean? Let's look at the acquisition of speed, which refers to how we increase our base speed outside of battle. This is mostly done through relics, either from a set bonus, substat, or boot's main stat. The issue is not just the fact that relics are all RNG, but also how you are required to meet specific values that are not in your control, but that allow you to have multiple cycles where you can attack twice before the enemy can even go once. This is why we build characters to meet certain breakpoints, such as 134 speed, as this is the lowest that you can have to move twice on turn 1. And over the course,
it is pretty fucking insane that you can build characters so fast that they can go 3 or 2 times before the enemy goes once. Like, that's fucking crazy, bro.
So 15 cycles will provide 5 extra turns, with 136 speed giving 6 extra turns. The problem is even more exaggerated on DPS characters, since while you only usually look to hit 134, you also need large amounts of crit rate, crit damage, and some attack percent. Of course, break DPS aren't quite as hard to build unless your name is Boothill, but this problem then gets even worse when we move on to the second part of it, the modification of speed. This refers to the ways that speed can be modified in battle. This can be done in many ways, such as skills, ultimates, and light cone passives. The issue here should be quite obvious, but this core mechanic of the game that is already gatekept behind RNG is now being further gatekept behind money. People keep pretending that everyone has an S5 dance, when many people don't even have one of them. And unless everyone has forgotten, after Danhang's banner in
I do think it's ridiculous. People say, look how free to play this clear was. I'm just using 2 S5 dances. And they say, dude, who doesn't have one by now? New players? Even relatively newer players? People who've only been playing for a year? Is that enough? Like, yeah, sure. If you've been playing since day 1 every day, yeah, you might have it. But like, even me as a pseudo whale, I think I have one, maybe like 6 or 7 copies. Right, like 1 completed one. I don't think I have 2 completed S5 dances, and I've spent a fuck ton on this game. So it's like, yeah, not everybody's gonna have this shit, bro.
February of 2024, this was not a rate up 4-star until Aglaya's banner nearly a full year later.
Sir.
This also assumes you're even pulling on the weapon banner, which if you're free to play, I don't know where you find the pulls to.
Bob already has one. What are you telling me? All I need to do is have 3 years of game experience, then make a new account, and then pull for the weapon that I know is really good with my pre-existing knowledge, and that proves the narrative that everybody should already have an S5 Dance Dance Dance, and everybody should not complain about Honkai Star Rail because if you just research the game for 3 years, then everything's fine? Oh, okay, great.
To be pulling weapons. Getting back on track, my point is that we have yet another mechanic that could have been something fun to experiment with, and have multiple builds where we want more speed for some bosses, more raw damage for others, but instead the solution is just have both, Omega lol, and this game expects you to have both. We see hypercarry teams that use Robin and Sunday that just don't allow the enemy to have a turn, which also requires speed tuning, which continues to compound the problem even more. Speed tuning is not skill based, it's not some smart solution to a problem, it's a mandatory optimization locked behind RNG to artificially get you to play the game more. While getting a zero cycle does 100% take a level of skill, let's not pretend it doesn't also require monetary investment and amazing relic RNG.
I wouldn't say zero cycling takes skill. I would say it takes knowledge and practice. I would say skill is something where a degree of ability is involved. However, and I want to say it like this. If someone tells you, oh, you want to zero cycle, then do this, and you can follow those steps exactly, and you will always get the clear as long as you listen to what someone is saying. And that's why I think it's knowledge-based. Whereas if someone tells you, oh, you want to get a home run, just hit the ball like this. It doesn't matter, right? Because you need to have the skill to actually be able to implement that knowledge and that practice in real time. Whereas zero cycle can be told, do 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have infinite amount of time to just press a button, right? That's why I don't feel like it's skill. It's like same thing like League of Legends. League of Legends is like, oh, you want to win top lane? Oh, just do this. Doesn't matter. If the other player's better than you, you're going to get fucking clapped, right? So that's why I don't think zero cycling takes skill. I think it takes knowledge and know-how and preparation, but I wouldn't say skill. Does anybody think I'm wrong about that? I don't want to be saying some crazy shit like that and not get called out if y'all think I'm off about that. Also, I see a lot of Mr. Pokey chatters in here too, so I would expect you guys to hold me accountable if I was like saying something that I'm wrong about here. Not wrong, but there's some caveat to it. Yeah, sure, I can see a little bit more nuance, but I think I'm otherwise on the point there. Is it knowledge pretty much skill? No, it's very different. Knowledge is the know-how and how to apply the practicality of it, whereas skill is the ability to carry out, right? To carry it out. And the reason why that's different is because with the ability to carry it out, all you would have to do is literally just do exactly what they say, and you'll always win. Whereas in a real skill application like baseball, soccer, even League of Legends, Valorant, the ability to carry that out infinitesimally higher because there's a lot of real world application and real world ability that you need to carry it out. Whereas you don't need any ability when somebody says, put the red block in the red hole, put the blue block in the blue hole. And I'm not trying to call it a baby game. I'm not. I'm just telling you that's what it is. Someone says, okay, use your ability and then press that person's alt all the time in the world. And when there is no pressure of that timing, there is no real world skill that needs to be applied, or at least one above a third grade level. Once again, I actually enjoy Honkai Star Rail's gameplay, but I think we can all agree it's incredibly surface level and incredibly simplistic. That's by design though, but I'm just trying to keep it fair here. It's the difference between a coach and a pro player. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so coaches are the people who have the knowledge of what to do. The players are the people who have the skill and the power to carry it out. Great example. Great example. Perfect example. Thank you, chatter.
Even be possible. I won't use Pokemon as an example of how to do speed well, since we spoke.
Who said that? Yeah, Harjin Pasta. I really, and I mean this genuinely. I appreciate you guys who engage with the riffs that I go off of and furthering where perhaps I'm missing a point or a great example that I could use. So I appreciate y'all who do actively engage in these things. I know sometimes it makes y'all's brains hurt and you're like, can he just say boobs already? But yeah, I appreciate you, man.
About it previously. If you're familiar with EVs, IVs, and nature, then hopefully you'll understand that that system is infinitely better. So let's continue where we left off.
So, okay.
Left off with Heaven previously. If you're familiar with EVs, IVs, and nature,
Okay, so EVs are these stats that you acquire as you kill specific Pokemon to get specific stats. So it's not RNG. IVs are randomized based on the IVs that you get on the birth of the Pokemon or the capture of the Pokemon. And nature is also RNG for what attitude do they have when you catch them. However, certain systems have been put in place of Pokemon to just say, oh, you want this nature? Eat this candy. Oh, you want this IV? Use this bottle cap. So that's how they work in Pokemon. But I don't think this system needs to be applied in a gacha game.
Then hopefully you'll understand.
Because at the end of the day,
that
I do think that gacha games, by design, need to have more RNG filters because, well, they're RNG games.
Is infinitely better. So let's continue where we left off with Heaven Burns Red. So earlier I mentioned it was important to consider the enemy's resistance, because if you attack an enemy
Is Heaven
that
Burns
resists your
Red a
damage
gacha?
type, you can't fill up the OD gauge. This is a bar
what is
that
this game?
fills up when you attack the enemy. And outside of some specific skills and buffs, you
It
will
is?
fill this up the fastest
Okay.
through basic attacks. The way you generally
Let me Google when this game came out. All right, this was released 3 years ago. So this was released before Honkai Star Rail. Interesting.
play this game is by stalling out the enemy until you can generate lots of skill points to allow your team to funnel buffs into your main DPS. You can build up to 3 bars of OD, at which point you will gain 1, 2, or 3 additional turns based on the amount consumed, and
Yeah, I think my uncle was building up his OD a little bit too much on cocaine because his ass is dead now.
5, 12, or 20 additional skill points. This is then when you would stack
Maybe we
on
don't
your
build
final
up OD,
buffs
guys.
and delete the enemy health bar. Notice again how this requires you to interact with the game's mechanics to succeed,
My uncle's not dead. He's fine, guys.
and encourages boss
fine.
knowledge that can't just be ignored with money or amazing luck. This game does have a gearing system, but there is significantly less RNG, and building
Saved.
the OD gauge is not buffed through substats, but through equipping gear that you craft, which will always have the passive you selected, not one of 2 different sets like in Star Rail. While I would
Yeah.
love to glaze the game even more, this is not the video for that, and we still have one more topic I want to talk about. It's time to cover boss mechanics. Just like with type weaknesses, boss mechanics are a way to make fights feel more engaging and interesting for the player. I think the best way to talk about this is to give examples of what Star Rail calls mechanics, then talk about how other turn-based games do actual.
It's like in a card game like Hearthstone, you remove all of the RNG by controlling your opening hand and the order of the cards in your deck, no skills needed. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Great, another great example.
Mechanics. We're going to start by breaking down the first phase of Incarnation of Strife on MOC 12. Also, I just want to say, if you've 3-starred MOC 12 against this boss and you don't even know the mechanics I'm going to talk about, that perfectly exemplifies my issue with the lack of boss mechanics, since new shiny units can just ignore this, while older units, even if you play to the mechanics, will not clear without insane investment, both in terms of relics and duplicates and light cones.
I got no idea what the fuck that thing is.
Also, support power creep is still power creep. Stop saying that your Jing Yuan cleared when in reality your Sunday and Robin or RMC dragged his lifeless corpse to the finish line.
I wonder who he's referring to. Who do you think he's referring to at that comment, guys? That is crazy, bro. That is crazy.
With that said, let's break down Strife. In the first phase, Lance of Fury will spawn 4 enemies that are copies of your team. Your team will have their health cut in half, and damaging their respective clone will restore a portion of this missing health. This would be an interesting mechanic, aside from the fact it doesn't actually matter. Your goal is to kill everything in front of you, and this mechanic doesn't change that. It doesn't change how you play, especially when this strategy of kill the little guys, then burst the big guy is the same for Swarm, Senior Staff Team Leader, who's just a bigger Automation Grizzly, Fury Praetor, Automation Gatekeeper, Pule, and many, many more. More than half the elite and bosses in floors 10 to 12 have this trait. It's like if I hand you a steak and say you can eat it, but on one condition, you have to chew. Like, yeah, no shit. If I don't, I'll choke and potentially die. You're not asking me to do anything I wasn't already going to do. With that in mind, let's keep going and see if there's anything else. All realms leveled, all legions to dust. World Splitting Spine, Survivors unto Dead Waters, Pyre of High Graves, and Ruination of Night and Light are all just basic attacks of various types. They don't do anything except deal damage like any other enemy. This is fine, since even bosses should have regular attacks. We also have 2 talents that I will summarize. Polis Protector is what provides the boss with War Armor, which is the 7 stacks next to the boss's HP. Whenever you hit the boss, 1 stack is removed. After the boss takes their turn, all stacks are refreshed. When the stack count reaches 0,
I think there's a big thing that Hoyoverse is going to condition their audience not to do, which is read the mechanics. because mechanics haven't mattered for like anything since like Cocolia, right? Where it's like, oh, kill the 2 bars and then you can hit her, or like kill the 2 pillars, then you can hit her. It's like, oh, okay, great. That could have been like a sign of what's to come, but like so many bosses are just like, it's gonna do some damage, and then it's gonna do some damage, and then it's gonna do big damage, and then there's this thing that's gonna come out. You got to kill that thing, and then it's gonna do damage, and it's like, oh, so what do? I just hit it. Yeah, just hit it, and you're good. Oh, okay. I guess I'll hit it then. Oh, and if you don't want to hit it, just press the auto button, and you'll be fine, as long as you're using like a pretty decent team. Oh, okay, great.
The boss takes damage, and the unit that removed that last stack regenerates some energy. While that sounds great and all on paper, this mechanic is still just hit the boss a lot. The second talent is Valorous Death Before Glorious Return. After the boss uses Calamity Eternal, the boss gains 12 stacks of Titanic Corpus, which when deployed,
Aglia removes 2 stacks each time her and her summon attack, so shilling her more than normal. So are you telling me that they made a boss that released with Aglia that is directly countered by Aglia? Man, I'm honestly shocked. I can't believe that.
completed will cause the boss to take damage, delay their next action, and regenerate some energy for the team. Your team is all given a stack of glory, which increases damage dealt and energy regenerate. To reduce those stacks, you hit the boss, but now you reduce 2 stacks. So in other words, he has 6 instead of 7. See how this still not has changed the fight in any way?
Yeah.
Sure, you can save your Pillar and Aventurine ult to use on the same turn as your DPS ult, but even if you could save like 2 full cycles through optimization, that doesn't matter when it still takes you 8 cycles. And this is only one side. It feels so unrewarding when I can explain these mechanics and take advantage of them, yet if you just pull the new unit and throw money at the problem, you can literally auto the fight and get a faster clear. So how, in my opinion, could we make bosses have more meaningful mechanics? Well, since I know most people don't want to read mechanics and have to use
I will say, as a gacha game, I do think it is Hoyoverse's choice to make this as casual friendly as possible, right? So I do think if you have a deeper understanding of the game, you can clear well, and if you spend money at the game, you can clear well. But I think the problem is that even if you have a deeper understanding of the game, well, you can't 0 cycle it. You can just clear it like in like 9, 8, 10 cycles, which is fine. It's still passable. But the discrepancy is far too high versus a retard that spent money versus someone who actually knows what they're doing. And I think if they were to bring it down a little bit, it would be a lot more enjoyable for all the players. Because right now it just kind of feels like pull the new unit or your gameplay is going to feel like ass.
more than 7 brains.
And I think that really punishes long-term players. So I'm okay with there being a differential, but not a one this big where we're currently at.
Cells to learn a
Did they remove cast versus passive? No, but it sure will make you stronger. So maybe cast versus passive is what we need.
boss. Let's look at a boss that brings together all 3 systems we've spoken about today, which if it was a gacha game, you could kill the boss with raw damage, but by following the mechanics, you can use a whole list of restrictions on yourself and still clear. Let's talk about Madarame from Persona 5 Royal. This is a 2-phase fight at the end of the second palace. In the first phase, you fight 5 paintings with the gimmick that if they don't all die on the same turn, they respawn with a portion of their max health. So just bring AoE, right? Well, actually, no. You see, the problem is that all parts have a different weakness. And since weakness plays a huge role in this game, allowing you to use Baton Pass, a mechanic that rewards the player for finding enemy weaknesses and provides additional damage, this also encourages you to prepare for the fight by having coverage over a lot of elements. Instead of focusing entirely on
I've already done this, it's fine.
The best personas, you're given the tools to build multiple teams to find the best solution to the presented problem. In this phase, the eyes are there to buff the boss and debuff the player. The nose deals magical damage and the mouth deals physical damage. What's more important is the attacks they all share. They all have a chance to cover one party member in ink, making them vulnerable to all damage types. The other move is the ability to revive fallen pieces of the painting. This adds another layer to the fight, since the boss will focus less on attacking and more on reviving itself, shifting your strategy from just kill everything in front of me to weaken all the pieces, then take them out in a single turn. Moving to the second phase, the boss summons 4 clones that all have a single target attack and an attack buff. They all have different weaknesses based on their color, with the boss himself having no weaknesses. Unlike in Star Rail, these enemies can't just be cleared with AoE trash damage. You need to target their weaknesses to make use of Baton Pass yet again to be able to take down the boss. Focusing the summons won't end the fight, but focusing the boss will cause your party to fall by the hand of those summons, requiring a more nuanced approach to the fight that balances these two aspects. Hopefully this has been an insightful view on my issues with Star Rail being a turn-based.
Yeah, so it's like this fight is you got to treat them different based off of what color they are. So pretty much this fight was an intro to racism. Really liked this fight.
Game, but not actually developing any of these pre-existing systems, instead butchering them and making them all feel redundant or as a way to extract more money and artificial playtime from the consumer. Now, to address some counter arguments before we go, Pokemon and Persona aren't gacha games.
Sure.
You're right, but Hoyoverse isn't an indie developer and has more than enough money to improve their game. Notice how they only released news about meaningful improvements after Wuthering Waves 2.0, and even Chinese fans are complaining. These improvements aren't being announced because they made.
Nah, they don't even care about Wuthering Waves. Nah, they don't care at all. My favorite content creator told me that they don't care, so that's what I think. But yeah, they don't care. No, it's just coincidence. No, they don't care.
Poor decisions and feel the players deserve better. It's because they were at risk of losing money. Pokemon and Persona aren't mobile games. Also correct. But besides the fact that Persona is.
Pokemon is a mobile game. As a matter of fact, it's one of the original mobile games. What the fuck do you think a Game Boy Color is? What do you think a Nintendo DS is? A Game Boy SP? These games were meant to be played on the go, aka on mobile. Mobile, on the go. They are in fact designed to be like that.
Also on Nintendo Switch, which really isn't much better than a modern phone, Pokemon was made on hardware that was already outdated by the time you were born. So being on mobile is not an excuse. Also, we see in Wuthering Waves, they're implementing features that are unique to PC because they acknowledge there's a PC audience. Why can't Star Rail do the same? Not everyone wants to deal with mechanics, and that's fair. But that's why I mentioned Madarama. He's a boss where, in theory, you can ignore the mechanics and just be so strong that he dies anyway. But
I actually really think that if there were simplistic mechanics added to these fights, people would enjoy doing the fights and learn, oh, okay, what's this guy do? Like, are players really still enjoying in 2025 the go up to this guy and press auto? I don't think so, right? Like, even that fight that I did where it was like, you got to kill the spirits, like, that was cool. It was nice. You know, the only problem was that the boss had so much fucking HP, it just felt miserable.
But if you choose to fight him on the game's terms, you are greatly rewarded for doing so. We don't need to implement mechanics that make it so that you can't enjoy the fight by just slamming your keyboard, but implement mechanics so that people who are willing to go the extra mile and learn them can get equal results with less. Star Rail is a casual game. Maybe I need a gambling addiction to understand this, but I play 5 gacha games right now and I play them all free to play. I do not own any monthly passes or battle passes. Some might say I should be the only motherfucker getting praised.
Great shout. I will never not think that's funny, bro. I'm gonna keep it a buck. I will always think that shit's fucking hilarious.
But last I checked, casual games are meant to be relaxing experiences with a little grinding and brain-dead content. Not hundreds, if not thousands of dollars of investment and 3 endgame modes that aren't skill-based almost at all, and instead of giving the player any real skill expression, you just throw money at it. And for the slop comments like, well, I'm having fun, sounds like a skill issue, sounds like broke to me, etc, etc. Look, if you enjoy the game,
what
I
a
am genuinely happy
fun community to
play
interact
the games
with.
you want to play. But can we stop being allergic to having a better game? When people critique Elden Ring, people might disagree, but they're always open to the idea of improving the game, even though it literally won Game of the Year and is considered one of the greatest games of all time. So let's stop pretending Star Rail has no issues, voice our opinions, and if we agree, perfect, let's give that feedback. And if we disagree, let's discuss why it's not good and how we can find a better solution. Anyway, that's enough.
I have no idea why this video has that many dislikes for no fucking reason. What a excellent fucking video. Shuzu Kita, great new content creator to the space. Love videos like this. I think a lot of good feedback was put into this and a lot of things that could be used to actually improve upon the current blueprint that we have for a mobile game that's turn-based RPG variety of the form of Honkai Star Rail. Great fucking video, man. I hope to see that guy within 1,000, 2,000 subs very soon.